Welcome, everybody, to the Distinctions for Life Office Hours live stream, chat, talk, hangout. I don't even know what to call this, and I will come up with something new every time until I get it. Welcome to Office Hours for the Distinctions for Life. I'm your host, Ron Davis. Thank you for tuning in. I began these live streams during the 2020 pandemic, the great 2020 pandemic, as a chance to connect with interesting people. There's very little format to these shows, and their purpose is whatever I want it to be at the time. It's been interesting because I just invite people that I find interesting. Generally, I know them. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. And we just talk about whatever. Now, today's guest I have known for a very long time, and we are friends. We've been Toastmasters together. We've worked on various projects in the startup community together. We've hung out and done church stuff together. We've done all kinds of things together. David and I, we go way back, man, way back. But you guys may not know David. And like I tell all my guests, the first thing I want to have them tell us is their origin story. So what is it that they do and how did they come to do it? And so I'm going to bring David on. And if I can get my pointer onto the right monitor, there we go. I'm going to bring David on and let him explain. So David, it's like Spider-Man. What's your origin story? This is episode 1 of the David Cranfill MCU.
Well, I guess I'm still developing a theme music myself, so I don't have theme music to introduce myself with in my origin story. But I graduated college with a marketing degree in 1995 and had a job lined up in the medical field industry selling software. And unexpectedly, my father got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He had been an entrepreneur and a business owner for 25 years in the collision industry and in the radiator repair business. And it was, I'd never changed my oil. It's kind of the cobbler. Son has no shoes. That was the case with automotive stuff. He didn't want anything to do with it on a personal side. And so he didn't train me or teach me to have any affinity for cars, and I didn't. And so I had no trajectory or idea that I would ever go into the automotive field. But then we got thrown a curve. He got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a month before I was going to graduate college. And I got thrown into the family business at that point. I kind of tell the story from Scott's Fitzgerald short story in the 1800s about Benjamin Button. It was made into a movie, I think, in 2008, starring Brad Pitt. But it's a short story that's fictional, but it's about a gentleman that's born 80 years old, and his whole life he progresses to being an infant. And that's kind of been my career. My origin story is I got thrown into this business somewhat through a crisis in our family. My dad didn't have a succession plan, so I got thrown into right there with family planning and succession of a business and how to pass it to the next generation in a crisis and urgency type setting. And then the next 20 years, I was kind of reverse engineering my career. So I started off at 21 years old, leading a company of 18 employees. And the closest to my age was about 15 years, my senior. And so I had to immediately learn leadership and how to engage employees and just keep the ship going the right way. I've always been analytical, though, and so numbers have always been of interest to me. And I really enjoyed throughout my journey the entrepreneurial aspect of it. So learning all about how to run a business, how to keep it healthy, and those things. And up into I shut down that business in 2016 for various reasons, and went on a journey of going back to the basics and learning sales. I worked for Xerox for a time, learning marketing, Dan Kennedy, direct response type marketing. And then just in the last 2 years, I've become a certified profit first professional and really focused on what it takes to sustain a healthy business from a financial standpoint. And so that's kind of catching you up to where we're at today. I'm a CFO for an equipment company, and I do the Profit First business advising and coaching by night, kind of a Batman gig that I have, and helping several small businesses.
You may want to
with their
go with the
profitability.
Batman thing. Sadly, you have a similar tragic beginning.
Yes,
You inherited Wayne Enterprises.
yeah. I didn't get all the cool toys exactly though.
Yeah,
so.
that's the big problem is like,
Yeah, or the money, but
yeah. And I've heard this story. It's very interesting. And you are the person who introduced me to Profit First. And anybody who's followed my channel knows that during the series of videos I did on the money flow framework, one of the key distinctions that got added to that at the end was Profit First, because you were the one that pointed out that a lot of entrepreneurs may have revenue coming into their business, but they never have revenue. They never have money going into their bank account or into their pocket, right? That they're taking in all this revenue and they're paying their expenses, and then they're immediately reinvesting it into the company and never having any kind of concept of, they think that there will be some point someday that I will be taking money out, right? But they don't have any idea of that. And then Profit First comes along and kind of turns all that on its head, right?
yeah.
You want to give people who may or not have heard of Profit First a quick synopsis of it.
Well, and you did a good job as far as there's all these axioms that we operate from, and we just assume it's the anecdotal story that you may hear from your preacher about why the turkey is put in a particular pan. It's because the generation before that did it that way, and the generation before that did it. And you finally find out, why did the generation originally put it in this size pan? And it's the only one we had. We didn't have a choice. And all these other generations just follow suit because the ones before them did it that way. And that's kind of the way profit is. It's people approach their financial well-being of their business based on GAAP accounting. And if you really think about it, and I did this, I was in this trap in my business for 20 years, thinking about profitability as an event that happens after I've sold and taken out all the expenses. So that's our basic accounting math, is sales minus expenses equals profit. Well, that rarely ever left anything over. I would always found ways to consume everything within the expense category, and profit was always zero. So the whole concept of Profit First is you're flipping that whole formula around, where you do generate sales still, but now you're going to subtract your profit first. It's about behavior. It's not about being an event. And it's about primacy. So you want to put profit first in your business to some percentage, and it ranges on the size of revenue that you generate in your business. But that's what you put that first. And then what's left over is the expenses that you have to conform to run your business. And so it's a behavior cash management tool more than it is even a financial tool or anything. It's more about laying on top of your business a framework that you can operate in without dramatically changing who you are or what you do, outside of making sure that you take the profitability first in your business.
Yeah, and I implemented that for Distinctions for Life after this, and it's very interesting because there are just a number of things in there that are really useful. And I mean, this is all based on a book too, that people could go buy the book, the Profit First book by Mike Michalowicz. Not only, yeah, there it is in the background there. Not only is there the idea of putting profit first, but he gives you ratios, so it all becomes sort of percentage based. And that's something I want to write an article about, using absolute numbers for things, because we're hearing lots of absolute numbers about some of the big event that's happening right now. And I'm like, those absolute numbers don't tell you what you think they're telling you. Right? Because, and so having percentages when it comes to accounting is really useful. And then they give you percentages based on how big your company is. So that's one thing. The other is separating profit from owner's compensation, those being two different things. And then the simple fact of, well, all the bank accounts, that's another thing. It kind of simplifies your accounting, but also the only looking at your accounting twice a month, that's like key to me, to keeping my mindset, my mind in the right place. It's kind of like people who watch their stock portfolio every single day. Like that'll just drive you nuts,
Yeah.
unless that's your form of entertainment, but it'll probably drive you nuts. Now, I
Yeah.
have my friends who are like, hey, what have you invested in this week? I don't know. And I put my stuff in last quarter. I only look at it once a quarter and do some rebalancing. Maybe I look at it once a quarter. But that idea of only looking at your accounts twice a month kind of helps you stay sane as well. And all of those are part of Profit First.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned the separation from profit and owner's comp, and that's an axiom that as an entrepreneur, I'm going to throw myself on my sword every chance I get for the livelihood of the business. And the reality of it is, if I'm not healthy financially as the owner, then we all do this. We find ways to bake in some of our personal expenses into a business. And so you end up overinflating really what your compensation is in some regards into the business. And you don't have a clear picture of what it takes for me to survive and what it takes for the business to survive separately from each other. And that's, again, an axiom is that as a business owner, I'm going to come second to whatever my business needs. And that's just, it's not healthy. It's not sustainable because, the principle behind it is, who is your best employee? And you may say, well, it's Ron, or it's Timothy, or whoever it is. And you go, whoa, wait. Would you, for everything that you do as the owner, if you were paying someone else to do that stuff and you told them, but this month I'm not going to pay you. Okay, I hope you're okay with that. I'm not going to make it up either next month, but it's just a sacrifice you need to make because you're in this role of carrying the weight of all of the decision making and all of the survival of this business on your shoulders. It's just something every once in a while we're not going to pay you, okay? Nobody would stay on that job and do that if that was a condition of it. And so mentally, psychologically, there's a mindset aspect to this. And that's why it gets into the behaviors of it. And it uses simple tools, like you said, too, as far as the bank accounts. It's based on your grandmother's cash envelope system for managing their budget. And you just set up separate buckets that are designated with a specific purpose for that money. And when the money goes in there, you don't take it out for any other reason than that. And so you have a tax account. And that's the government's money. And I especially in the state of Texas here, I see a lot of businesses that don't understand sales tax and how when they collect sales tax from people, that's not your revenue. That's not your money.
Not your money.
Yeah, and you don't want to steal from the government.
Right.
That's
I actually heard I heard an interview with the comptroller of Texas just a couple of weeks ago, and he pointed out, he said, we have moved the franchise tax return date. Like, because all our tax date, when he said we moved it the same way the federal government moved it. So you moved franchise tax in Texas is basically your business income tax or your corporate income tax kind of.
Yeah.
We'll call it that. That's close enough. Said, but we did not move sales tax because all sales tax is you collecting taxes for us. That's money that you're holding in trust for the state. And that whatever you're holding it. And it's also, no, it is for this quarter, but that money isn't yours. It's ours that you collected, and it needs to be paid in a normal, timely manner. Right.
Right.
And if you don't take that into account, because I think the way I would have done it in the past when it came to sales tax is I would just make my revenue and I would put it in the software that collected the sales. Right. And that money would get thrown into my bank account in a weird way that was hard to figure out because I was using Square at the time. So Square takes their fee out before they give it to you. And then it ends up in your bank account. But you collected sales tax that also goes in this one big lump. And so at the end of the quarter, I would go and run a report that would tell me how much sales tax I collected, right? Or go look at Square, how much sales tax I collected. And then I would go try to find that money so I could give it to the state.
Well, that's the problem with one bank account for your whole business is putting it all into one serving tray. And that's another principle in the Profit First book is our human behavior. It's a Parkinson's law that whatever's set in front of us, we're going to consume it all if it's available to us. And so that's when everything's put into that one bank account, then you don't think about what it needs to be allocated for until after you get dinged for it or asked for it. And so that's when you separate it out from the get-go on those percentages, like you mentioned, Ron, kind of have a plan of what it should be coming out every month from expenses, owner's comp, taxes, all of that. Then all of a sudden, when you look at your bank account for expenses and it's already taken out all these things that in the future you're going to have to pay for, all of a sudden you're not as excited to go out and buy new toys and new things and reinvest in your business because that portion is more accurate and smaller than what you thought one bank account.
And there is a lot of the psychology to it. And one of the things about that is actually I kind of find it a little freeing in the sense that you always just looked at one bank account, right? Now you just look at one bank account. It's just a different one. Like you look at OPEX, you look at your operating expense account and you ignore all the other accounts. Like you just don't think about them the same way you kind of did before, except everything was jumbled up and those sales tax were going to be needed at some point in time. And any profit or compensation you gave yourself was going to be you would spend it and then you would have to go try and figure out how to pay the bills. Whereas now all that stuff is done and out of sight and out of mind, especially profit is out of sight and out of mind. And it is only you run your business off your operating expenses account.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing.
And you want to preserve your profit. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
You want to preserve that profit because it's the reward for what you did. It's not something you need to reinvest in your business or anything. It is the finish line, if you will, for having run a successful quarter or year or what have you. And so that's another big principle of profit first is understanding the value of profit.
Yeah, and that profit account. We're saying really deep in profit first, but I think it's great because I did a little bit about this in the video but this is letting us dig even deeper into it. And I think that's great, but we're going to talk about the survival trap in just a minute, which is related to this and a topic that you've talked on that I wanted to get for my viewers. But the thing I think about when I have that profit account is when I do that quarterly distribution, which you only distribute out of your profit account once a quarter. When I do that, it's like there are rules about distributing it. It has to be distributed. It's not for the business. It is in general. It should just be. I don't want to say frivolous, but it should be something that's for you. That has nothing to do with business. Like for me, I'm saving to replace my car that I wrecked. And the money, when I do that distribution, those two accounts are actually at the same other bank. And it goes straight out of my profit account and into my car fund. And does not go into my home bank account. Like my owner's comp does, which happens owner's comp happens every 2 weeks. That distribution happens. Because it should, right? It's the payroll expense that you're paying, right? It's payroll.
Yeah.
So there is that.
Well, or debt reduction is the other, legitimate use of that profit is to get out of debt and free yourself from that is another application that's otherwise it's rewarding yourself. So
interesting. Yeah. I guess I didn't realize that because I've been lucky enough or have foresight enough, however you want to look at it, that DFL doesn't have debt. So I didn't realize that you could take your profit and pay off the debt. I can see why you would do that. But
in terms of the survival trap, it relates to what's going on. Like I mentioned, even, back in my origin story of a crisis kicked off all these decisions in my family's business that we hadn't anticipated really, my dad didn't have a succession plan, didn't expect to pass away at age 52, much less his barely graduated 21-year-old immature son, taking over a business that I swept the floors and I mixed paint and I did some janitorial in deliveries of product. That's the experience I had in the family business to that point. And so when a crisis hits a business, just like in our own bodies, in our health, this is another lesson I've been learning personally, is there's got to be a reserve there. If you think about it in terms of your own health, there's a health reserve that we have. And it's parallels to even what's happening in this pandemic. For a business, your health reserve is your cash. If you don't have a healthy amount of cash built up in your business, and that profit first system is a great system to help ensure that, then you don't have that reserve for when a crisis hits. And thus, the solution the government's been throwing out there for everybody is go borrow money from us, go get an SBA loan and all of that. And I won't go real far down those rabbit holes, but more debt necessarily isn't health reserve. And so just like the virus is attacking people's lungs and making it difficult to breathe, it's what's happened to our whole economy right now. Yeah. The oxygen has been sucked out of our economy, and you're relying on however healthy your business is as to how well you're going to survive or weather that. And it's kind of a harsh truth. It's kind of the survival of the fittest still in a capitalistic society. But if you don't have a financially healthy business going into a crisis, just like if you're not healthy as an individual and you have a virus attack you, your chance of survival isn't going to be good. And so that's the factor in a survival trap, is when a crisis hits, how do we react? Financially or health-wise, in whatever category we're talking about, it's usually emotional. Usually what happens when we are faced with crisis is we panic and even freeze up is one of the first stages, is to go, oh, I don't know what to do. Is this for real? How long is this going to last? Maybe I hold my breath for a little bit, it'll be over, and I don't have to worry about it, and things will go back to normal. And I've even been subject to this myself. Right in the beginning, I thought, oh, they always threaten, these bird flus and all these things, and nothing ever comes of it. And here we are. I never would have imagined that it would have gotten to this place. And hearing the unemployment numbers today was so alarming. And yet, crisis doesn't last. It's temporary. That's the other big message I think people need to hear and know, is it's about surviving. It's about recovery, just as it is if you got the coronavirus. It's about figuring out how to survive, respirator, whatever it is you need to weather the crisis and get onto the other side. If you can survive it as a business, and if you can get as much runway as you can, and that's the decision making you've got to get to as quickly as possible. Don't be a deer froze up in the headlights, and don't make crazy wrong actions. The story is told in Fix This Next, and it's all about dealing with crisis. One of Mike McAllis's other books, along with Profit First, of Amanda Eller. And the short version is she's a resident of Maui in Hawaii and went on a 3-mile hike that she's used to, left her cell phone and her water in the car, and saw a blog about 100 yards off the path and thought, well, that's a good place to meditate. I'll go off the path and sit and meditate for about an hour. When she got done, she couldn't find the way back to the original hiking path and got lost for 17 days because she didn't have a compass. She didn't have a destination that she knew where to get to and the tools to get her there. And that's the same thing right now with most businesses and the crisis that we find ourselves in, is if we don't know with laser precision where we're trying to get to and how we're going to get there, then you start making all these crazy decisions. She ended up following a boar path at one point, thinking it was a hiking trail, and was so desperate to get out of her circumstance that she kept searching for the path, even into dark, even until nighttime, and ended up falling off a cliff and breaking her leg. And so that's it applies to us as businesses, as we start scrambling and trying to make all these crazy decisions about how to survive. And again, society and our, the big institutions, to me, aren't necessarily helping small businesses when they want to say, go borrow money. You need cash right now, which is true. That's the truth of it. We all need cash to get as far down the runway as we can. But borrowing more money just delays the problem. maybe creating a bigger problem. It's like falling off the cliff and breaking our leg now, and it's going to be harder to find our way back to our destination if we haven't been smart all the way through about how we're going to survive it. And so that's the idea of the survival trap. And that's where Profit First also parallels in to help you have that healthy financial reserve to weather a crisis.
Yeah. And I do think one of the other things about having the Profit First system in place and having that, that practice, that discipline, that habit of looking at those accounts regularly and only spending out of those accounts means that when something goes wrong, you're like, immediately, you're like, I don't have money to do this. Like all these things I needed to do, I can't do because there's nothing in OPEX. Or OPEX is dropping rapidly, or my income account shows me that money's not coming in. I know something is, so now I just don't have this money to do that. The truth is, this situation is, it's the Incredible Hulk of crises for a business. But people run into these problems before. And I know that one of the first times we talked about survival trap before everybody's only thinking about COVID was you pointed out that one of the ways business people deal with things is they start adding new business, right? Or like if they can sell, then they want to go sell other things. And they're getting off of that focused path for their business. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, and that's, back to the sales tax or anything, like we'd mentioned earlier with Profit First is if everything's going into one bucket and you're needing to pay suppliers and you're needing to, pay off this or that. And next thing you look at your bank account and the sales tax is due and you don't have money in your bank account, then it makes us go on red alert and panic and scramble as business owners to figure out, I just got to figure out right now how to alleviate my pain and get some money back into the business. And all of my conventional business model that I've been following, I know I'm not going to be able to maybe get back into my sales cycle for another week or two, generate that revenue. So I've got to come up with something new. And so I know I can take on a new product. I did this for several times. I did this when I had my paint distribution business in the automotive industry. And, I drain the bank account, get desperate, try to figure out how can I sell some money right now. And I'd go look at other product lines to take on, thinking I could get new customers with a new product line. And what I never fully took into account was I got to buy inventory. I got to set up a new vendor relationship. Now there's more logistics involved. And so just increasing your sales, if it's not true to your original business model, you end up adding expenses and adding more inefficiencies into your business that can be costly than if you stick to what your business model is. And it is right now. It's I see it with restaurants, and some of them I think they've done really well. You look at especially high-end restaurants. I've heard of several stories, not just in our city, but all across the nation, where these high-end restaurants are unpacking. They're kind of taking a step back from the delivery of the food on the customer's table, and they're unpacking it all the way to the grocery stage and giving you, the groceries, which is great. But now people, and I've seen people, there's an outcry of there's price gouging. There's all this stuff when I try to buy from this steakhouse my groceries. The reality of it is they don't buy them like a grocery does, first thing. But the other thing is people go out to eat like that at a high-end steak restaurant for an experience, not because they can't go buy a good steak at their grocery store. And so part of what you've got to bake into that is staying true to why would people want to buy their steak and cook it at home from us, if not for a recipe that we give them on how to do it at home, maybe candlelight, candles, giving them packaging in with all of that, the experience. And of course, I've seen, humorously, I've seen other people, because of the TP apocalypse that we're in and the lack of toilet paper that's available, I see other people packaging toilet paper with their food. I'm not sure that's the best message to send people, but I see, I get why they do it.
Yeah.
So, it's
those particular businesses are they are doing, those restaurants are doing more thinking holistically as well, which is actually a good, because a lot of times I think
right.
people get so focused on I make food, I prepare food, and I sell it to people who eat it, that all they're thinking about is delivery, or how
Yeah.
can I do drive through, that kind of thing, right? About they're not thinking about their other problems, right? Because that's one of the things that starts this, right? Is their other problem is they already have orders in to their distributors for food, and they have to make those payments, right? And now they've got this food, but they're not going to sell as much of it as, because they don't have anybody coming to the restaurant, and delivery is not the same thing. So they're saying, hey, we have this stuff. We'll sell the stuff we've already bought to our customers as well. And they have a need. And so they are thinking a little outside the box. They're not just thinking about preparing it, right? They're thinking
Right.
about turning that around. And then the toilet paper thing, there's the whole issue, and Aaron and I talked a little about it, so I won't get us going on the toilet paper thing. But in truth, there's a ton of commercial toilet paper out there, but it's not the same stuff. It's not made by the same companies. It's not made the same way. It doesn't fit the same dispensers, etc. And that's part of the deal. And people can go, you could say as a commercial business, I'm going to sell you our commercial toilet paper, and people may buy it because they need it, but they're not going to use it the same way they use others. Well, I mean, the end use will be the same, but but there's that. And so, you do run into these, you get trapped into like you've changed your business. Like you got to be careful not to change your business because you need money at the moment.
Or drop your price. I mean, that's the other thing I've seen a few businesses, that's been their answer to a drop in sales is, well, maybe I'm too expensive, I'm going to drop my price. And the price is more a component of value than it is of, people aren't buying your stuff, then it's more, you've not built the value into it for them to buy it, rather than, oh, it just wasn't, it was too expensive, that's why people didn't want to buy it. That rarely is the case. It's you're not making the value proposition.
Yeah, or they're in this crisis now, right? So people don't want to spend money, which is true. People don't want to spend money because they're in a crisis. But if your solution is just drop the price, well, first of all, it just doesn't work, right? Like that's the thing. I've seen people who just recently, I was watching a business where they were launching a product, and they decided they dropped their price some, right? And then they had to drop their price more, and then they dropped their price more, and still weren't filling the thing they were selling, still weren't filling up with customers. And that kind of shows you immediately that the problem is not the price. It's not the price. Maybe that the people you've targeted are no longer able to afford your product. That could be a truth, but it is not. But just dropping the price doesn't solve your problem in this situation.
Yeah.
I am always, and I did a whole episode on this too, and made a handout with like a whole list of, you guys can go back and look. It's in the money flow framework. It's in the buy, and there is a list of ways to increase value for your product without dropping your price. Which is always the thing that people need to do, in my opinion. Almost always you need to increase your value. And it may be that you're going to use ways of increasing your value right now that you might not use in other situations. For instance, if you're doing some kind of online course, throwing in or adding one-to-one coaching as an add-on increases value without necessarily dropping your price, but it also means you now have you're trading time for money, right? And time for money is has to be done very cautiously as well. So, David, how can people find out more about you, connect with you? What do you want people to do?
Well, I know you've been scrolling. There's a link you've got on there. It's a list of social media places you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook. Just there, send me a message. or email Small Business Outfitters. It's SMBIZ outfitters@gmail.com. And I've got a resource for people even. It's the recession response. It's a resource that Mike Michalowicz has generated and provided of how to respond to this recession and the crisis we're in terms of cash flow, business strategy, debt, taxes, and accounting. And so any of those methods that you want to connect with me, whatever's most convenient, then like I say, I'd be more than happy to visit with any small business owner and share the recession response one pager that we have.
All right. So people go do that. You guys need to connect with David. He's awesome. Well, thank you for those of you who stayed through the entire this entire discussion with David. And I encourage you to, of course, you need to subscribe to the Distinctions for Life channel. I mean, heck, last Sunday we told you how to look good on Zoom, which is what everybody needs to do nowadays. There's new distinctions come out every Sunday. And then we're doing this live stream every Tuesday and Thursday, at least through the month of April, probably through the month of May. We will have a new one next Tuesday. It's already scheduled. Next Thursday is going to be an even better one. So you guys need to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're watching this on Facebook and not YouTube, you should go over to YouTube. But you can also go to the Distinctions for Life Facebook page and follow us, and you will again get notified when we go live, because it does stream live both to YouTube and Facebook as well. And those of you who stuck around and watched, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, this is Distinctions for Life, where I hope you get what you really want in life with small changes that make a big difference. Until next time, I'm Ron Davis.